It's very beneficial to hear and glorify the great acharyas. So we'll attempt to do that with the blessings of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. We'll try to appreciate and glorify and become uplifted by hearing about the character and pastimes of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakura. My throat's a little sore from singing on Sunday, so rather than generally we sing that song from Narottam Das Thakur on the disappearance days. Like I said, my throat's a little toasted, and I thought maybe I could read the translation if I can find it here. Does anyone know the actual Sanskrit title of that song?
Disappearance or disappearance?
Disappearance. So this is from Narottam Das Thakur. I'm pretty sure it's disappearance. It's appearance?
Yeah, disappearance is.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. My mistake. But considering what Prabhupada has said about the appearance and disappearance, they're all auspicious, either one.
Yeah.
So we won't read then the lamentation for separation. Although we still do separation. So let me offer obeisances to my Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shanyavari Pastata Deshatarane. We'll read the pranam mantras to His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati. Discussion. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshabhani Videvi Dayataya Kripadaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhurjyojjvale Premadhya Sri Rupanuga Bhaktita Sri Gora Kuruna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Sri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Vivrudhapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine. The translation of those pranam mantras. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Varshabhani Devi Dayata Das. It's another name for Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati, who is favored by Srimati Radharani, and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, who delivered devotional service, enriched with conjugal love of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Srila Rupa Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. Do not tolerate any statement against the teachings of devotional service by Srila Rupa Goswami. So first, just a very brief historical backdrop of the nature of the material world. Krishna says, time I am, destroyer of the worlds, and the nature of our disciplic succession is that in course of time, as Krishna spoke to Arjuna, the succession appears to be broken, and therefore the signs of appears to be lost. So he's again reestablishing it. So this is a perennial issue in the material world, that things get diluted, worn down, scattered is the word that Imam Raja Sakalena Yoganashta Parantapa becomes scattered, the teachings. And even if they're available, you could say, in a written format, without the personification of in the form of the Lord or his pure devotee, it's difficult to remain clear as to what the Siddhanta is. Bhaktisiddanta. Bhaktisiddanta is, of course, his name, but it's also a concept. It's an eternal concept, just like Bhaktivedanta. The end of all knowledge is bhakti. It's the same principle. Siddhanta, the conclusive truth, is bhakti. So, need for Krishna to reassert either directly by himself incarnating, as he says, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijam yiham. Whenever there's a decline in religious practice and a predominant rise of irreligion, Krishna says, I descend myself to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I bent myself again and again, millennium after millennium. And then Krishna says, one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving his body, take his birth again. So here's a statement from Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada. He says, as Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance are all spiritual, transcendental, they are not ordinary things. Similarly, Lord Krishna's devotee, his representative, who is sent to this material world for preaching the glories of Lord Krishna, their appearance and disappearance is also like Krishna's. Therefore, according to Vaishnava principles, the appearance and disappearance of a Vaishnava is considered all auspicious. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in reference to Srila Haridas Thakur, has a very famous stanza. It says, he reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. And in the very first page of the Srimad Bhagavatam, even before the table of contents, there's a dedication to Srila Bhaktisiddanta that Prabhupada writes that this work, this monumental task of translating Srimad Bhagavatam, is dedicated to his divine grace, Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakura. It was on the 26th annual memorial or celebration of his disappearance day. So that would have been in India, in the Radha Damodar, when Prabhupada was translating first canto of the Bhagavatam. So, and then in that dedication, Prabhupada writes, he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. So the Lord, great devotees, and ourselves, Krishna says, Najayate mriyate bhakatachin. Nobody ever takes birth, nobody dies. We're all eternal souls. So even us, what to speak of the acharyas or the Lord. So there's no question of them not being present. It's just, are they prakrita or aprakrita? Are they manifest or unmanifest? Depending on our consciousness, will be aware of their presence or not. Different times, Prabhupada in kirtans, sometimes the devotees would be saying, oh, there wasn't a good turnout at the kirtan or something. And you didn't see? Lord Brahma was there, Lord Shiva. So it's a question of consciousness. These personalities are eternally existent as the Lord is. And in one sense, we could say God is a community. certainly Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Krishna is always surrounded by his loving devotees. So there is no real concept of God in a vacuum. You know, we are always, and Krishna identifies so strongly with his pure devotees. He said, you know, they're in my heart, I'm in their heart. Practically speaking, we are one. There is no difference between the pure devotee and the Lord, certainly on a quantitative level, but qualitatively, Krishna states that very clearly, that the pure devotee should be treated non-different from myself. Acharya man vijanayan, he says in the 11th canto. The acharya should be treated just as my own self. So that's a little background, and of course, I think it was Ravindra Swarup Prabhu wrote a nice article. You know, Krishna's appearance 5,000 years ago, and then things became diluted. There was misuse of the Vedas, animal sacrifices, you know, slaughter of animals. So Krishna is Lord Buddha and actually directs people away from the Vedas, as ironic as that sounds. Here's the Lord himself in a Shaktivesh avatar, directing the people away from the Vedas and having them worship him, but then to bring it back around to the Vedas, then he empowers Lord Shiva to appear as Shankaracharya and preach actually Mayavadi philosophy. You know, Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of the Lord Vishnu, and he's preaching Mayavadi. It was this gradual scheme, this strategy to get people back to following the Vedas, but in this impersonal way. And then we have many acharyas also, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, they were in South India. But it was really setting the stage for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance to synthesize, you know, simultaneously one and different. You know, it's not all one, it's not just different, it's simultaneously one and different. So along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Radha Krishna combined, so many associates appear with the Lord to facilitate his pastimes, just like when Krishna appears, you know, all these the cowherd boys, the gopis and so on descend. There's a whole entourage. Prabhupada, one lecture, he said, Krishna does not mean alone Krishna. It's just like a king. If a king comes or some famous president or something, you know, there's always all these assistants and ministers and secretaries. So when the Lord descends, he brings so many associates. And there's a direct parallel between the associates in Krishna Lila and Chaitanya Lila. As Lord Chaitanya is Radha Krishna, Balaram is Advaitas, Mahavishnu, you know, there are all these different associates. But then these intimate, like Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, these are gopis in Krishna Lila, but they appear in Chaitanya Lila in these forms of these associates of Lord Chaitanya. So again, the perennial need to reestablish after Lord Chaitanya was within just a couple of generations that things got very obscured, that it went underground, and the teachings appeared to be lost again. And of course, we can't really talk about with the in concert, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakur, our guru, our Param Guru, Srila Prabhupada. It's sort of a package deal. They're all intimate associates of Srimati Radharani in their eternal position in Krishna Lila. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his song Siddha Rasa, Bhaktivinoda Thakur reveals his identity, Kamala Manjari. Kamala Manjari is an eternal of Ananga Manjari, who is one of the supermost gopis and sister to Srimati Radharani. And coincidentally, Lord Nityananda, who is the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead, he takes on different forms in all the different rasas to serve Krishna. And it's understood that Nityananda, Balaram, is a embodiment of the Gopi or Manjari, Ananga Manjari, who is the younger sister of Srimati Radharani. So we have Bhaktivinoda Thakur as Kamala Manjari, an eternal assistant of Ananga Manjari, Balaram, Nityananda. And Gaurikishore Das Babaji is Guna Manjari, who's another intimate associate of Srimati Radharani. And now coming to Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakur, he, in his eternal identity in Krishna Lila, is Nayana Manjari, who is another intimate maidservant of Srimati Radharani. So having some more awareness of who these personalities actually are can give us a little more sort of wow factor, like what are we involved in? Like these personalities are the most intimate servitors of Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world. And they come in these forms in Chaitanya Lila, to reinvigorate the disciplic succession, the parampara, to reestablish. So, see. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in Jagannath Puri on February 6th, 1874, of course, of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srimati Bhagavati Devi. And they received this son as the mercy of Lord Jagannath. So there was Bhakti Vikas Swami was describing that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision of Jagannath, who was imploring him to preach Krishna consciousness. And it wasn't that he wasn't already doing that, but like just, he wanted it to spread all over the world. This was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement. I think it's in the Chaitanya Bhagavat Prithiviti Atyagi Nagaradi Gram. He wants the holy name to be spread in every town and village. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had this vision of Jagannath, and he says, well, how can I do it? And Jagannath responded, don't worry, I'm sending somebody, So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying for this ray of Vishnu, and the famous story that probably most of you have heard, that after Srila Bhaktisiddanta took birth, his birth name was Bimala Prasad. And Bimala, let's see, where did I get that? Bimala Devi is also considered an expansion of goddess Lakshmi, who is the consort of Lord Jagannath. The Bimala Devi is located within the Jagannath temple complex, and she is worshipped as the guardian of the temple complex. And Bimala Devi only eats the remnants of Lord Jagannath's prasad. So ultimately, this is an expansion of Srimati Radharani. Lakshmi, all the gopis are expansions of Radha, the Lakshmis, just like in the Brahma Samhita prayers. Ananda Chinmaya Rasabrati Bhavita Vista Birja Evana Darupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Evana Visaya Kalatma Bhuta Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Just as Krishna expands and somebody expands, as all the other gopis also dance. They're all expansions of Radharani. And then the queens in Dwarka are expansions of Radharani. And then the Manjaris are these young gopis who have, kind of more access to the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Just like if you have little children, because they're innocent, you may say or do things in front of them that you wouldn't do in front of like adults and so on. So in intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna, these Manjaris are very, very confidential. They have the inside scoop on everything. So Bimala Prasad was his birth name. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw that he was the mercy of Bimala. So Bimala Prasad, the mercy of Bimala Prasad. And I mean, we've heard these many times, ever fresh, that when the Rath Yatra cart was stalled in front of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, and it was actually 3 days, it was stuck. And Bhagavati Devi took the opportunity to bring the child up on the Rath cart, and as she was offering obeisances, Bimala Prasad reached out to grab the lotus feet of the Lord, and the garland falls off, and garland, so then it was confirmed, this is the ray of Vishnu. So, and some of Bhaktisiddanta, he was such a exalted personality just from his birth, and Prabhupada, it's so interesting when you hear Prabhupada speak about Srila Bhaktisiddanta. I listened to a few different lectures, Appearance and Disappearance Day, and you just hear the tone of Prabhupada's voice change. Generally when Prabhupada's speaking, preaching very strongly, he has the World Acharya kind of gear. He's in World Acharya gear, very powerful, but when he's speaking about Srila Bhaktisiddanta, there's this vulnerability that comes out. You can just hear it in Prabhupada's voice. He's very, reverential and, deferring, that so often Prabhupada said, people give me credit for doing this great thing, but it is only by the mercy of Srila Bhaktisiddanta that I could do anything. And of course, this is the natural humility of a Vaishnava. I mean, we do give credit to Prabhupada, but Prabhupada is giving all credit to his Guru Maharaj. This is the principle of parampara. And so Bimala Prasad was also, there's a famous story Prabhupada tells about him taking the mango that was meant to be offered to the deity, and he's like 4 years old, and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur mildly rebuked him. Oh, you have done, the way Prabhupada describes it, oh, you have done very wrong thing. You have taken something that was meant for the deity, and of course then he vowed to never take mango. And the way Prabhupada explains it, it's just so sweet. It's so like he's just speaking in such a sweet way. And anytime Srila Bhaktisiddanta was offered mango in his adult life, and then the way Prabhupada's tone, he says, Srila Bhakti says, no, I'm an offender. I cannot take, So that vulnerability is something I was speaking with, who was I speaking with? Oh, I was speaking with Alan about that. That's one of the things that endears us so much, like when the disciples of Prabhupada, because again, most of the time Prabhupada was in that World Acharya gear, but when Prabhupada would reveal this vulnerability, this deep humility, it's so charming, because someone who's so powerful, when they show that vulnerability, just like when Krishna shows that vulnerability of being captured by Mother Yashoda, in the Damodar Leela. Here's the Supreme Lord, and Queen Kunti is saying, I'm so bewildered by these pastimes. Here you are manifesting universes, you're inside and outside of everything, and now here you're crying, you're in fear of Mother Yashoda. So the intimacy or the vulnerability that the Lord shows, or his pure devotees, it endears us. We don't have to carry the sense of like bravado to be powerful, like, we're going to influence. And just like with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was meeting with Prakashananda Saraswati, it was his humility that melted their hearts. Here they were, these staunch scholar Mayavadis criticizing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for being a sentimentalist. But it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's humility that they were just like, wow, what is this? Who is this person that is so humble? And his effulgence, and because they were attracted to the Brahman effulgence, and Lord Chaitanya kind of turned up the amperage on his effulgence. So they were attracted to his effulgence. And there's that first verse in this string of verses in Sarvabhauma Shatakas where he says, Sri Gaurasundar is the friend of the universe. He's most compassionate, the giver of the holy name. His bright, attractive, golden form is filled with supreme sweetness. His smile is enchanting. The glance of his lotus eyes is very cooling. And the words from his mouth are full of love and are like nectar, So it's the weapons that Krishna used to kill the demons, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is killing the demoniac mentality with his beauty, with his glaring, attractive, transcendental form. Elsewhere, Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says there's the beauty of the characteristics of Sri Gaurasundar are incomparable and without a second. His beautiful form, it agitates the minds of hundreds of cupids. It blows everybody away, just the beauty of the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the same way, the pure devotees, they're definitely shining, the Lord is shining through them, so they're so attractive. So Srila Bhakti, or Bimala Prasad, he was like a childhood prodigy, and he would memorize the Bhagavad Gita. By the time I think he was 7, he could, recite the whole Bhagavad Gita. And there was an important, as he grew up, and then he became, he got involved in astronomy and astrology, where he got the name Siddhanta Saraswati, because he was such an amazing scholar in that field. And as he grew up, at one point, he became some type of mentor, a teacher for a king. I don't remember which king it was, but I think he was mentoring his children, I guess. But this king had this huge library, and because Srila Bhaktisiddanta was a Shrutidar, like you go in, it's like going to take pictures of everybody. He assimilated vast amounts of knowledge from this huge library that the king had. And there was a pastime where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was, the caste conscious Brahmins it was so deeply entrenched, even today, but you can imagine back then how heavy it was, the caste Brahmins, Smarta Brahmins. So there was these, great debates and assemblies, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was invited to speak to kind of clear up, the difference, who's actually high of the Vaishnavas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very, very sick, and he was concerned that he wouldn't be able to do it. And Bhaktisiddanta said, I'll go and speak. And it's famous how he began his discourse praising the Brahmins, and the Brahmins are like, yeah, he's got it right, but then he completely dismantled their false pride and how the Vaishnava is even higher than the Brahmin. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta, of course, he was known as the Singha Guru. He was very formidable. And Bhakti Vikas Swami was saying that it's a little, you could almost say, intimidating. How could someone who was so scholarly and astute and strong and austere, how is he presenting bhakti? Bhakti's all about, love and cuddles, or it's like everything, So, but the thing is that at the time, even though Bhaktivinoda Thakur had, reestablished, he had begun the reestablishment of the validity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings of the 6 Goswamis, but still, it was still very, very, the Vaishnav, what do you want to call it? The so-called Vaishnavas had such ill repute. They were actually looked upon as like a sex cult. They were indulging in illicit sex in the name of practicing Vaishnav. So Bhaktisiddanta was so heavy about establishing the Siddhanta in service of the bhakti. You can't have this bogus idea of love without following strict regulative principles. We can't make it, sahaja means want to take something very cheaply, and this is, Srila Rupa Goswami describes niyamagraha, 2 ways you can fall off the path: too much attachment to rules and regulations, or neglecting the rules and regulations. So it's like the Brahmins, the Smartas, they're all attached to the rules. So they go off the path. And then the Sahajiyas, they go off the path because they don't follow any rules. So there has to be a harmonizing, not that we are following rules and regulations just for the sake of following them, but it's in service that one has to have a pure heart. And so Srila Bhaktisiddanta was very adamantly opposed to the Sahajiyas and the Radhakund Babajis, and who were misrepresenting. But his actual heart was, he's a gopi, he's a manjari, he's imbued with Radha Bhava, he's the most loving. But circumstantially, he had to have this posture of just very strong preaching. And our Srila Prabhupada also, for the most part, when Prabhupada is preaching, he's very, very strong. But again, he would show that humility and that vulnerability. But because there's this strong tendency to take things sentimentally, and Prabhupada in that purport in the Gita where he says that religion without philosophy is sentimentalism, which leads to fanaticism, whereas philosophy without religion is mental speculation. You become a little hard-hearted, become proud, know so much. So let's see here. It was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur encouraged, inspired, and ordered Bimala Prasad to always worship Lord Hari and preach the glorious teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're stepping back a little bit again to his younger days. Bimala Prasad, being an intelligent and genius young lad in school with his friends, discovered a new language. Later, he mastered the science of astronomy. He was eloquent in explaining scripture and a reservoir of zealous enthusiasm to preach. And then the pastime of him, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had given him Harinam initiation, which is and we've kind of conflated the two, or not conflated the two. We have a first initiation for Brahmin initiation, but previously, and so at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had given him. But then in order to take Diksha, the Brahmin initiation, it would be against the etiquette for Bhaktivinoda Thakur as a father to give that Diksha to his son. So he directed him to Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji. And the pastime was that he approached him, and Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji was, such a renunciate. He didn't want to have anything to do with followers. And he's like, I'm not into having disciples. And Bhaktisiddanta was so, disappointed. His father had told him to ask for initiation from Gaurikishore Das Babaji. And when he returned home, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, had asked him, so you have initiation? He said, no, he wouldn't. He says, don't come back until you're initiated. So he goes back and implores, Gaurikishore Babaji, and he said, I'm not inclined, but I'll ask, I don't know if he said, I'll ask Lord Chaitanya or ask Krishna. And he comes back a few days later or sometime later, and he says, you ask? And he says, oh, I forgot. It's really testing the determination of Srila Bhaktisiddanta, and it got to such a crescendo where Bhaktisiddanta was like, if I can't be accepted as there's no point in me living. I might as well commit suicide. So finally, he relented and was the only disciple of Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji. And Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji was such the personification of such renunciation, living even at one point living in a latrine just to keep away the sentimentalist. Babaji, give me your blessings, being harassed. And there was one, I don't want to go into that, but so anyways, that renunciation as exemplified by Gaurikishore Das Babaji, Vairagya. Now Srila Bhaktisiddanta his presentation of vairagya, raga means attachment. So vairagya means, no attachment. But another meaning of vairagya, the vi, which changed to vai, the prefix vi, also is like a multiplier. So real detachment is vairagya, which means real attachment to Krishna. And then seeing everything in relationship to Krishna. And there's a very nice verse in the Upanishads that says that one who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So there is a type of renunciation where one remains aloof from the material world, but it's because of a deep attachment to serving Krishna. So sometimes that vairagya is exemplified by someone living a very, very austere renounced life. But Srila Bhaktisiddanta, his presentation of vairagya was to employ everything in the Lord's service. And he was criticized for dressing in British, top coat and driving around in a car, and just it kind of blew everybody's mind that here's this sadhu, and he's he seems like he's entangled in worldly affairs. But this is, as Rupa Goswami describes, this is real renunciation. But it's just presented differently according to different circumstances. But and our Srila Prabhupada also employing everything, in money, vehicles, businesses, temple, book publication, all this is very much involved with the material energy. But when we see everything in relationship to the Lord, for the Lord, it's all divine. Prabhupada gives the example of electricity. An electrician can use electricity to heat something or to cool something. So for the Lord, he can use matter to act like spirit and vice versa. For the Lord, there's no distinction. For us, we make a distinction when we are in a conditioned level. We make this distinction of matter and spirit. And until one is purified from one's exploitive mentality, we're cautioned, to be very careful about how we interact with the material energy. And maybe even in the beginning, we have to remain very aloof from things that we're, tempted by, so to speak, in our previous life. The more mature level is to see everything as the property of Krishna and to engage everything in Krishna's service. Like Prabhupada gives the example of you can't renounce something that never belonged to you in the first place. If you drive by the Bank of America or Wells Fargo and say, I renounce all the money in this bank, it means nothing. It never belonged to you. So it's an immature idea of renunciation to say, I'm going to be aloof from the material world. It never, because that's when one is still, there's attachment and aversion. So that verse in the Upanishad is that someone who sees everything connected to Krishna, he never hates anything or any being. So there's no aversion to engaging in the material world, as long as one is fixed in the principle of spreading Krishna consciousness and seeing everything as an opportunity or a tool to facilitate that. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta was very dynamic. He had opening temples. He had these diorama exhibits, and he was very revolutionary in that mood. So that's, one of the very significant features of his preaching was this vairagya of employing everything in Krishna's service. So getting got a few minutes left. I thought I'd share something that was relevant to our understanding of our relationship with Prabhupada as grand disciples and great grand disciples and so on. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta was asked. Again, this whole thing about Ritvik and, previous gurus, we don't need a living guru type of thing. So this is in relationship to Jesus Christ. Srila Bhaktisiddanta was asked. This is from a book called Amrita Bani, which is a collection of questions and answers posed to Srila Bhaktisiddanta. So if Jesus Christ was a Jagat Guru and his instructions are capable of bringing us deliverance, why do we need a spiritual master? Srila Bhaktisiddanta. We accept both the universal spiritual master, Jagat Guru, and the initiating spiritual master. By accepting only the Jagat Guru, we may face many anarthas. If at present we want to follow Christ's orders by accepting him as Jagat Guru, and we think we do not require an initiating spiritual master, we will certainly face doubt about how well we can follow Christ's orders. The Supreme Lord or Universal Jagat Guru delivers his instructions about the absolute truth only through the disciplic succession. Again, Bhaktisiddanta is still speaking. As I sit on the bank of the Ganga, and now he's going to give an example illustrating what he just said. If I sit on the bank of the Ganga in Navadvip, far from Himalayas, where the Ganga originates, I sit in the bank in Mayapur, at this bank of the Ganges, far, far away from where the Ganges starts in the Himalayas, and am able to touch her water here in Navadvip. Similarly, the initiating spiritual master brings the Ganga of pure devotional service, which emanates from the Lord's lotus feet, and places it in my hand and on my head. Because I am an ordinary, powerless person, I am not able to climb the Himalayas as to touch her water there. Similarly, if the flow of the Ganga from the Himalayas is interrupted on the way, I would have to face the danger of accepting a polluted flow instead of the pure Ganga. If the instructions Jesus Christ gave 2,000 years ago do not come to us through disciplic succession, or if we have to sort them out from books, then perhaps we may create a blunder and accept a perversion of the truth taught in the name of Christianity. We may even come to accept something opposite from what he taught, thinking it is his actual philosophy. The initiating spiritual master is also Jagat Guru because he is a manifestation of the original Jagat Guru, the Lord. Out of his causeless mercy, he delivers the message of the original Jagat Guru through the disciplic succession. He does not cheat or flatter the disciple, nor does he yearn for any material gain. So this is, just in our, we don't want to commit any offense to any living entity. What to speak of devotees who are chanting Hare Krishna. We have all veneration for anyone who, Devahuti says, Aho bata slapacho to goriyan yajiva yajvi vartate namatudvyam. How glorious are those who are chanting the holy name. Anyone who's chanting, even if they're born in a family of dog eaters, they're glorious. They've bathed in holy rivers, they've performed Vedic sacrifices, they've studied the Vedas. They're worshipable. But then there's the principle of lips or milk touched by the lips of a serpent causes poisonous effect. Without clear Siddhanta, the bhakti, it ain't happening. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta had to be very, very strong to dissipate the false presentation. In the same way, we have to have enough intelligence and know the Shastra conclusion, the Siddhanta, so when people advocate these false doctrines like the Ritvik philosophy, Srila Bhaktisiddanta is addressing right there in regard to Jesus Christ. So it's not, we should be respectful. We don't want to hate anyone or attack anyone in a malicious way. But we have to be clear. We have to be, at least for ourselves, if someone doesn't want to hear, then, you know, there's an expression, if you don't think anybody can help you, then nobody can help you. If you don't think you need help, you've got a problem, you know? So, das anu das. We're supposed to be the servant of the servant of the servant. We're never in this like superior position. We're always, we want to take the dust. Thakura says, the dust from the lotus feet of pure devotees gives rise to devotional service. While service to the devotees is itself the supreme perfection and the tender root of the creeper of divine love. So there's no question of thinking oneself superior than others, but we have to be clear on what the Siddhanta is. And if we are called upon to challenge that, if that service is placed in our lap, then we have to do it and maybe have to speak strongly, but not in a mood of denigrating the other, but in a mood of compassion. We want to help people clear up their illusion so that they can actually experience what real bhakti is. But there's always a struggle in the material world. The demoniac propensities, lust, anger, and greed, the three gates of hell. So, we become bewildered by the modes of nature. So this is, it's a constant issue that in addition to glorifying the Lord and the beauty of the Lord and devotional service, there has to be this, in a sense, we have to be spiritual warriors. We have to defend the Siddhanta from false presentation. So Srila Bhaktisiddanta was such a monumental figure. And Bhakti-Vikas gave a great analogy. He said, even in our movement, when Prabhupada even was present, there were different leading devotees who were recognized as being more advanced than others. And he gave examples of like Satsvarup Maharaj or, at the time, Kirtananda Maharaj. They were looked upon, Kirtananda Maharaj was, the first sannyasi in ISKCON. He had a lot of clout, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and it's also the disappearance day of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. Yesterday he left his body in my speaking Krishna Katha. Amazing personalities. But so Bhakti Vikas was saying, even there's you could say relatively higher or lower devotees, but relative to the great acharyas, he said it's like small ants and large ants crawling at the feet of the Statue of Liberty. The acharyas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktisiddanta, Srila Prabhupada, they are on such an exalted level. They are intimate associates of Srimati Radharani. They have been sent directly from the spiritual world to preach Krishna consciousness. And that in no way we want to minimize the purity or the exalted devotional service of any devotee, even their devotees. But there is a special exalted stature of these great acharyas as intimate associates of Srimati Radharani that are directly sent to the material world to preach Krishna consciousness. So when we meditate on who these personalities are, we can really be invigorated, like, wow, did I hit the jackpot? Prabhupada was just here, Srila Bhaktisiddanta was just here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the perspective of universal time, it was yesterday. Lord Brahma's life of 311 trillion years, Prabhupada says, is just a flash in eternal time. So we are involved in a tradition with the most exalted personalities not even just in the universe, the whole spiritual world, which is 3/4 of the kingdom of God. The material world is just this little, so somehow or other, by inconceivable, the Patita Pavana, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving the highest teachings of Radha Bhava, intimate love for Krishna and separation, the gopis, the six Goswamis teaching this most intimate, exalted understanding to the most fallen. It's inconceivable. So again, like when we have more knowledge, when we have more understanding of what we're involved in, we can really be more keen to take advantage of what we've been given. Like if you, like a father giving an allowance to children, if they're going to misspend it, they're not going to, maybe give them a nickel or something, they're not going to give them $100 bill to go to a candy store and buy $100 worth of candy. Like they don't understand the value of it. So to the degree that, therefore, the knowledge, the studying the Shastra and hearing from advanced devotees, it's so important to invigorate our own practice in Krishna consciousness. And I'll end with this verse from the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam. It's Prithu Maharaj is speaking. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental from the mouths of great devotees, when the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. So this is also in the first canto, there's a purport Prabhupada said, more important than reading the scriptures is hearing and explaining them. Reading the books is a type of hearing, we could say also. Prabhupada says spoken kirtan. But it is especially important to hear the Shastra explained from the mouth of a pure devotee. It is imbued with supreme potency. And that will actually, in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada says, the transcendental vibration from the mouth of a pure devotee is so powerful that it can revive the living entity's memory of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For a conditioned soul, therefore, it is very important to hear from the mouth of a pure devotee who is fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord without any material desire, speculative knowledge, or contamination of the modes of material nature. So, Prabhupada once said too that the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat, they're considered both equal, but the person Bhagavat can tap you on the shoulder. If we're going off, we need the sadhu. We can't just lock ourselves up in a room and read the Shastra and then in our imagination think we're an advanced devotee because we memorize some verses or It's when we actually have relationships with pure devotees of the Lord, where they are taking us under their shelter and helping point out where the areas that we need improvement. We may not get that just sitting in our room reading the Shastra. There's certainly benefit, and we're supposed to do that, but we really need to emphasize the importance of having a relationship with a pure devotee and his representatives. Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anyone have any comment or question? We have 5 minutes.
I have some other things I could some notes I took from the biography.
Okay.
You've been referring to. One of the things that I remember from reading Bhaktisidanta biography was just the energy that he had for spreading Krishna consciousness constantly. He established started a lot of periodicals. In addition to having the ideas about festivals. He had this idea for a diorama exhibit. He made huge festivals. These periodicals, there's about 15 of them or so that Gaudiya published. Some of them lasted for years, some of them kind of fizzled out. Some of them were published in more than one language. But for instance, the Gaudiya, there's one called the Gaudiya, which was actually a continuation of periodicals started by his father, Bhaktisiddanta Thakura, called Sajjana Koshan. And it's described as being a veritable encyclopedia of spiritual topics, intensely philosophical, didactic, and polemic. I know what polemic means. Having to do with controversy.
Yeah.
It says the Gaudiya was a living word of the Acharya Srila Saraswati Thakura. And he says the outside world finds it unanswerable and terribly uncompromising. It always calls a spade a spade. It is battering down the barriers of ancient superstitions, misunderstandings with a pitiless vigor, almost unbearable to those who are not unusually well prepared for complete disillusion. This is the way things are in that biography.
Yeah.
It says the entire field of Hindu beliefs and practices have been surveyed and assessed at their proper valuation, undeterred by fear and favor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, probably you get the publication of the books, magazines, periodical, newspapers, like that was top priority. I think in the icon of you call the logo of the Gaudiya, there's the printing press is on one side, and I can't remember what's on, if it's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Radha Krishna or something, like they were such an emphasis. And of course, Prabhupada's, principal instruction from Bhaktisiddanta, if you ever get money, print books. So we have, that's the real, 6 Goswamis writing the books. So this is our line. I apologize for not allowing more time for more discussion, but thank you, Ananta Prabhu, for bringing that out. And it is 1 minute now, so I think we better round it up. Thank you very much. Srila Bhaktisiddanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai.
That was what my comment was.